I would like for you to go with me and just imagine a frail, old, elderly woman with a slight limp. And she's walking down a city street, busy city street. But all of a sudden, she gets wrapped up and dragged into an unexpected and very heavy rainstorm. All around her, people are scrambling to dodge the downpour. They are scattering. They are running for cover. But this old woman, she's in no condition to run. She's not in any condition to rescue herself and to escape the drenching rain. So as the winds pick up and get really furious, the only thing that she can do is grab on to the front of a building on the main street of this busy city, now underwater almost. Oh my goodness, she's afraid. Every step she takes, she gets even more worried. And she says to herself, oh, I feel like I'm going to slip and fall and injure myself. And this is a worry that she cannot dismiss. It overwhelms her. It's like a torrent in her soul, like the water flooding in. But then a miracle happens. Because across the way, on the other side of the street, there's a stranger. And the stranger noticed this old woman struggling in the storm. She was curious. She was worried. And her mind reminds her of a phrase she's heard before. Her heart has heard this phrase many times. It said, "If not you, who?" Instantly, after she heard that voice in her head, she dashed across the way in the direction of this old woman. And as she approached the woman, she tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Ma'am, may I help you?" She's trying to pull this woman under the cover of her own umbrella. This old woman instantly grabs onto the stranger's arm as though it was an answer to her prayer. But then she gave her a puzzled look, and the stranger thought, oh my, I asked my question in Spanish. Because earlier she had asked herself, what if this was my abuelita, stuck in the storm? Would there be a kind, compassionate soul to come to her rescue? She shuddered to think that probably no one would. And that's why she dashed across the street. So here she is. And abuelita is grabbing onto her, but she doesn't understand her. So she mustered up her most fantastic line in Spanish, and she says, "Señora, ¿puedo ayudarle?" The sparkle, that sudden flash of hope lit up the old woman's eyes. She didn't have to say one single word. Her face filled with gratitude was all that was needed. So while you listen to that story, my question to you is, how did it make you feel? Hopeful? Encouraged? Glad that someone was there to rescue abuelita? Please, please, please hold on tight and dearly to that feeling, because that wonderful story will never make the evening news. Never make it in your news feed, in your social media. Why? Because in the conventional wisdom of the news gods, as we say in short and small gods, that story is not newsworthy. So you ask yourself, what then is newsworthy? Think about it. What do you watch? I dare to say, what's grabbing the news, the headline news these days, is what we called in the business shock and awe. These stories are meant to shock you, make you feel. But what's happening is these shock and awe negative stories are making the viewers feel shocked and awful and depressed and anxious. That's what's happening. So you say to yourself, what is going on in our world with shock and awe? And how can we change the world and shift the script of bad news and change the world for good? And that's what I'd like to talk about today. How do we shift the script of bad, negative news and change the world for good and amplify the greater good, multiply the greater good in life? Now, if you don't believe me, I want you to, the next time you read the news, the next time you listen to the news, the next time you talk about the news, notice how much the news is grounded in bad, negative, and even toxic presentations. And I should know, because I've been a journalist for 25 years. I know I look 28, okay. I've been around for a while, and I've noticed it, and I've taken part, because that's what your job is, that you're hired to do. But think about what we are consuming every single day. Back in my day, news and negative news was used to grab attention. It was used to boost ratings, right? And drive up viewership. I know. That's what we were meant to do. But what is it doing now? And how can we stem the tide of toxic news in our families, in our communities? I'm not saying that we walk around in life wearing rose-colored glasses. I'm saying that there needs to be a balance of what we're indulging in. How do we do that? I say we flip the script on bad news and change the world for good. You ready? All righty. So here's the question I have for you as we dive in and create a space for good news. How many of you in this room right now would feed yourself poison? Let me see your hands. All these people would feed themselves poison. Oh, my. But do you know, if you are feeding yourself, or if you consume a daily or constant diet of negative, bad news on television or online, chances are the poison is already in the pot and on your plate. It is. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? What is the poison that we are feeding ourselves? And do we deserve better? There is a phrase in my industry, and it goes like this: if it bleeds, it leads. So you know what you watch on television is already purposed because they want you to feel something. And if it's bleeding, in reality, that means these are tragic stories, destructive stories. Yes? So what can we do? This is what I'd like to talk to us about today, how we can flip the script and amplify the good news, right? And change the world for good and better. So what I did, I went outside in my community and I started looking for good news stories, uplifting stories, stories that were underlooked or overtaken by ignorance. And what I found was, in between the lines, there existed a plethora, a treasure trove of amazing stories that we were not covering because we were so fixated on the shock effect. And my investigation led me to find this weekly, or start, I should say, this weekly program, an uplifting show called Hometown Heroes. And this was a segment near and dear to my heart because it involved people who were solving problems. They were not connected so much to the problem, but they wanted to find the solutions. These are people who were flying on the radar. They didn't covet the spotlight. They wanted to go out and make better their community and their town. They wanted to amplify the good and make the world better. People like a school teacher who just retired, but now he's spending time, his free time, tutoring and mentoring kids who are at risk and in trouble. People like a very busy professional who has no children of her own, but now and then she'll find time in her schedule to go down to a public hospital to rock and cradle abused and abandoned babies. Babies who are in need of human touch just to survive. There's an article that has been written by this author, Denise Batten, and she says, negative news is not only unhealthy for us, not only does it harm us, it makes us unhappy. What can we do as we write our own stories in life and decide to watch this or that? Right now, we've got so much negative news that's flooding our airways and flooding social media. I'm not saying you can change that, but what we can do is go seek and find the stories that edify, that uplifts, and that encourages. And that's why I love my 6th grade teacher, Miss P, we will call her. Miss P was a woman on a mission. She was very much involved in civil rights when I was back in school with her. And so instead of just looking at the problem, complaining about the problem, she became a doer of fixing the problem. And so she started this human relations club when I was 18, no, 14, okay. And so she started this program. What was the mission? To build bridges to bring Black students and white students together. Students from different backgrounds, even though we were living in the same tiny state of Connecticut. Miss P taught me how to be a doer, not a watcher. Remember the stranger in the storm? The stranger in the storm was a doer. not a watcher. Makes a big difference. And so, by the way, I must tell you that I was that stranger in the storm. And Miss P taught me, if you see something, do something. So as I conclude, I'll ask you, what would you have done if you were the stranger in the storm? And if you were, at some point, a stranger in the storm, how did that experience make you feel? Don't forget it, because it feeds our soul. So my parting words: go out there in the world. Find your own way to flip the script on bad news and change the world for good.